Giving up on that question, or?
That's it, huh? Thanks a lot, everyone. So no one's going to ask about the movie? No one's going to ask about the TV show? Where's the kid I gave the $5 to? No, you got to stand up there.
This is the first time I'm hearing about a TV show.
Really?
TV show?
I like the inflection, huh?
Yeah. That was just pathetic.
I'm not usually tongue-tied when I'm talking to people. I'm just very nervous talking to you.
There's no reason to be, actually.
Fair enough.
Okay. Yeah, I want my $5 back, for God's sake. All right, well, I'll tell you a little bit about this while you're thinking about Oh, God. If only it worked like that.
Funny thing is, I would have let you take it.
Yeah, all right. No, I don't need it. Thanks anyway. You keep it.
From what he says, I think you've gotten quite a bit of his money. He owns all your books on his
Yeah,
shelf.
I mean, that's sufficient for me. If you keep buying my books, that's perfect. I won't ask for anything else. Those books have put the kids through school and et cetera, built me a house. Any rate, so TV show. I partnered with a company out of England about a year ago after many, many, many years of being involved with movie companies that ended up going nowhere. And at that time, they said, look, we think what we should be doing here is a TV show. 3 hours isn't enough, even if we could get 3 hours out of a movie series to do one of your books. If you want to do it right, and you don't want to try to get a studio to commit to 3 movies or something like Lord of the Rings, what you really need to do is a TV show. And I said, yeah, okay. And they said, well, we're willing to make you a partner in the endeavor, and we're willing to give you creative control. So I got interested, when they said you can have creative control, because that's never given to anybody. And I thought, well, if I can control the direction this story is going to go, and I can protect the overall storyline and the characters and so forth, that's probably worth more than anything. And I know from talking to many of you over the years that that's the thing you most want to see. Don't give us, Elfstones of Shannara Light or Divergent or whatever. Excuse me. So anyway, I said yes, and we signed on. Shortly after that, they found some TV writers who have been involved extensively in writing speculative fiction and fantasy for... I'm having trouble here. This is what your country has done to me. Some TV writers who had a lot of experience and who were very interested in following up on this project, and they particularly wanted to do Elfstones of Shannara. So that was good, and then right after that, their agent said, boy, this is bad, isn't it? Talk for a minute, would you?
Well, I'm not sure what the agent said. Probably a hi, how are you, how was your flight? Start that way.
Okay, let's try it again.
Okay.
So the agent represented a movie director who you would know immediately, but I can't tell you about. We had done a whole...
Just between you and me here.
Yeah, all right.
Okay.
Maybe later. Who has done a whole series of movies that you would know immediately, and he said he wanted to be involved as a director. So that was really good, and last late summer, we took it to the networks, and we got a network to buy in on this, and we're expecting to have this signed sometime next week. And that will, if it works that way, they'll start filming in the spring, and it will be on the air in the fall. The really good news is that the writers are very committed to protecting the material and doing the story in keeping with the way the book reads. They'll change some things because these things have to change, you understand. Books read differently than movies show. It's just not the same thing. They can't do interior monologue, for example, so they've got to get past that. So they have to change some things around, do some changes there. But luckily, everything I've looked at so far, and I've looked at the first 3 episodes, are excellent, and I don't see any problems with it. So I'm very encouraged.
Well, more and more, we're seeing a lot of good representation of some classic books and series coming to TV. The Discworld series over in Britain has had 2 or 3 really, really good adaptation movie series, and then, of course, Game of Thrones is just becoming amazing. Now HBO's looking at American Gods, and
Well, we pitched this thing as Game of Thrones for the family.
obviously in a different family way than the Lannisters approach family fun.
Yeah, that's true. We're looking at a more traditional kind of family here in the present times, and it'll have a little bit different sensibility. You won't have to send your 10-year-olds upstairs. All right, I'm kidding. All right. Fire away.
I was curious, which story did you take the longest to work on before you got it finished?
Well, Sword of Shannara took 6 or 7 years. I wrote it 3 different times. There was, because there was no there was no contract, no expectations, and I was flailing around as a law student and then as a lawyer, a young lawyer. So I took a lot of time with that book. Nothing else has ever taken that much time. First book, of course, and then, of course, once it got a publisher, once Del Rey got hold of it and Lester took a look at it, he said, well, you should write it again, don't you think? I said, well, yeah, I guess. So I did. And there was a lot of time involved in that book. I think altogether, from start to finish, it was at least 8 years altogether. So that one took the most time. Everything else has been, I don't think it's, since then, I don't think I've had a book take more than 2 years. And that was fairly early on that I was having to put more time and effort in, because I was still learning to be a writer. I didn't know anything about being a writer, I hadn't had any real formal training. I didn't have any formal training back then. I didn't know anybody in publishing. I didn't know any writers, so you're out there sort of in the cold trying to figure out what to do. And they taught expository writing back in those days. Nobody taught fiction writing, for Christ's sake.
Yes, I've noticed that, in particular in your works, in the Shannara series and the Landover series, you've mastered a way of making the characters not be swallowed up by the world they inhabit. I notice many fantasy authors, the world gets away from them, and towards the climax, as the plot builds, it gets lost. What advice would you give to prospective writers on how to keep it grounded in the characters and not in the world that's being built?
Well, there's a bunch of tricks to this. First thing is that you want to remember that you don't dump things in clumps. And most of what you reveal in the story is on a need-to-know basis. If the reader doesn't need to know it at that point, don't put it in at that point. Don't put it in until the reader needs to know about it. And you can pretty much train yourself to do that with a little bit of thought. Elmore Leonard's favorite statement is, I reread my work and I cut out everything that the readers tend to skip. And that's true. What you do is, if you find yourself bogging down in your writing, and I have kind of a famous story about this. When I first wrote, and I had somebody look at what I was doing, they said, well, you need more description. So, of course, I gave them description. I went overboard. And when I got to, I sort of skated on the first book. When I got into Elfstones, at one point Lester said, if you give me one more damn weather description in this book, and it was a case of overkill, that you put too much in. And it's what happens with researchers when they research all those years and they got all this great information and they just put it all in the book. And people go, oh, I don't need to know all this, for crying out loud. Where's the story? The story is what matters. And you never break your pacing, and you don't break away from the story. If you can go to bed at 3 in the morning in the middle of one of my books, then I have failed. I don't want that. I don't want you to go to bed. I don't want you to go to work. The trick is...
We need work to get your books, though.
Yeah, well, I understand this, but, from a selfish point of view, I don't want you to put it down. And I think that's kind of my mantra for how it goes. And these days, I'll have to admit to something. that when I see a big book, and there's lots of them out there, my first reaction is too many words. Nobody needs all these words in this book. Who's editing it? And every time I go through it, I just want to take out a red pencil and start going, you know, because there's so much in there that doesn't have to be there. And I know that that's the feeling, is that somehow you have to puff this thing up to the point where it's overblown, but I've gotten to a point in my life now where I just feel like, don't like it for the most part. Some books, yes, but not very many.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hal-Con.